Since June 12th, we have been reading portions of Matthew, beginning with the Beatitudes, the opening of the Sermon on the Mount. The evangelist invites us to focus on Jesus the teacher, the new Moses, a figure which his Jewish Gentile audience would understand. But how are we to understand some of today's difficult verses? A collection of Jesus' teachings from throughout his public ministry, some of which are also found in Mark and Luke. Some background is helpful. There is lots of scholarship around who this evangelist was, when he was writing, where, and for whom. It's easily accessible in introductions to the New Testament. But a few things are useful for us, 21st century believers, to know. 1, the evangelist was likely a Jewish Christian, writing for a Jewish Christian audience. 2, around him, the relationship between Jews and Christians was already complicated and not clear to them, or now to us. But a few things, on the other hand, are clear. By portraying Jesus as the new Moses in the discourses around which the gospel is structured, and emphasizing the abiding validity of the law, the evangelist appeals to the Jewish audience by validating the past tradition and, at the same time, their attachment to Jesus. We might ask ourselves what our own relationship is with our tradition as we try to live it in the 21st century. First, this image of throwing what is holy to dogs doesn't make much sense to us. Since Jews in Jesus' time didn't keep dogs indoors as household pets, the dogs probably represent outsiders, which is to say, Gentiles. Reworded, it might be, don't preach about the reign of God to non-Jews. Pretty curious, but perhaps an example among others in the Gospels showing how the early Christians grew from their original understanding of who Jesus meant his message for to the time for which this gospel was written, after 70 of the Common Era and the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem, perhaps 85 of the Common Era. This version of what we know as the Golden Rule, and which appears in one form or another in all the world's great religions, may have first appeared in the 5th century before the Common Era. It's common in rabbinical teaching, and Jesus' followers certainly would have known it as part of their tradition. The narrow gate reference is perhaps to what is known as the covenant theology found in Deuteronomy. One road leads to life and the other to death. Choose life. A few thoughts for reflection. Jesus is presented by the evangelist as the authoritative teacher. We might ask ourselves, who have been and are the authoritative teachers in our own lives? Is Jesus the one? Also, Jesus is clear about the lasting validity of the community's traditions. Where are we in relationship to our lengthy tradition? For many of us, the Second Vatican Council was a turning point in our relationship with that tradition, particularly the liturgical tradition. It's worth examining what we think and how we feel about our relationship with that tradition today. It might also be interesting to reflect on how, in the first reading, Abram dealt with Lot. There were quarrels between their herdsmen, read employees or slaves, and Abram, desiring harmony and no strife between their households, offered Lot the choice of whichever portion of the land he preferred. Lot chose the richer portion. And then the Lord made a covenant with Abram, who trusted God, promising him land and countless descendants. The discourses in this gospel, among other purposes, offered the early Jewish-Gentile community an ethical path for living their Jewish heritage as followers of Jesus in a Gentile world. Our tradition, too, offers us paths for living ethically in our world. Abram, in his dealing with Lot, provided them and us with a similar path. Seek harmony with generosity and trust.